President Trump's attorneys today sending their response to Robert Mueller about his conditions for an interview with the president. The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, saying this, quote, "It's not a refusal, but at the same time, it's not a completely unreasonable position. I can see a way in which Mueller may agree with it." And the prosecution's star witness in the trial of Paul Manafort wrapping up his testimony today. Rick Gates forced to answer questions about his past infidelity, his embezzlement, and Manafort's instructions for Gates to be truthful with the FBI during a 2014 interview. Joining us tonight, Sidney Powell, former federal prosecutor, author of the book License to Lie, about the Justice Department and its wayward ways. Good to have you with us, Sidney. Let's start with the Manafort. It's great to have you here. Let's start with the Manafort trial. Rick Gates, your sense is whether the so-called star witness in what is styled a document trial, prosecution at least, how did he play, and did he do his job for the prosecution?
Well, Mr. Gates comes with a lot of baggage. Obviously, he embezzled millions of dollars from Mr. Manafort. Obviously, Mr. Manafort did not know that was going on, or he would have done something about it, which should tell the jury that he doesn't pay very close attention to his finances and the companies that Gates was involved with. We know that Mr. Gates lies, and we know that he made such a sweetheart deal with the government. It's unbelievable. He would get probation in exchange for his testimony. It's very common for Andrew Weissman and others on the task force like this, as I wrote about in my book, License to Lie, to give sweetheart deals to the real, actual criminals. At the same time, they squeeze them to go against people who didn't commit a crime at all. So it's going to be up to the jury here to closely evaluate the evidence and to remember that as jurors, they can do justice. The jury is a product of the Constitution, and an individual juror acting alone, if they maintain a not guilty position on every count, can keep an unjust conviction from happening.
Well, that's a possibility among, as we know, many. The Gates, whether he is testifying about embezzlement, testifying and affirming that he lied, it is difficult to see how the jury would not be influenced by the so-called star witness who lies, who has admitted embezzlement and breaking laws.
Yes, they're certainly going to be influenced by what he said. I just hope they realize the pressure he's under to comply with whatever the prosecution wants him to say. And the fact that they used the tactics of having him say, oh, yes, I committed a crime and I committed crimes here, too. Those are things for the jury itself to determine. They can't take Gates' word for that at all. And
at this point, have you got a sense of how it's going? Which side, the defense or the prosecution, is ahead on points? If I can oversimplify.
Well, the prosecution may be a little ahead at this point because the defense has not really started its case. I hope the jury will keep an open mind and again remember that a single juror can stop an unjust conviction, which might be the very message that needs to be sent to Mr. Mueller to stop this witch hunt.
And let's turn to Robert Mueller. He's now holding in his hands a letter from the president's attorneys with an offer. The suggestion is that I love really Giuliani's language. He has taken a position that is, the president's attorneys have taken a position that's not entirely unreasonable. I know what he meant to say, I think. But perhaps there is also truth in what he says. It isn't entirely unreasonable, and that's exactly the way Mueller might respond. What do you think?
Well, we are talking about the President of the United States here. I certainly would not advise him to sit down with Mr. Mueller under any circumstances because, frankly, he's already done that. He did it within 48 hours of Mueller being named special counsel when Mueller interviewed as director of the FBI. I still haven't figured out how Mueller goes from interviewing as director of the FBI to special counsel in less than 48 hours to investigate the person who just rejected him as director of the FBI. I want to see the emails and text messages between Rosenstein, Mueller, Comey, Strzok, Page, Rosenstein, all of those people for at least the 2 months prior to Mueller's appointment. I think there's evidence in the Strzok Page text message that Mueller was being kept abreast of the Hillary Clinton email investigation and also the Russia collusion narrative.
Well, well-informed he was, and I can't find much about this witch hunt that frankly isn't upside down, illogical, filled with conflicts of interest and illegality. But there you are.
It absolutely is.
The Department of Justice at its very worst. Sidney Powell, as always, great to have you with us. Thanks so much.